In today's podcast, I want to talk about learning. Learning is a very important skill because once you learn the skill to learn, you can do just about anything. And learning has never been easier right now because of the vast amount of information available at everyone's fingertips. However, because there is so much information readily available, it can be hard to deduce which information you should listen to. And then once you know what to listen to, nothing in your life changes until you change your behavior. And so I'm going to talk about all of the things that I have learned about learning that have drastically helped me. And I share it with you with the hopes that you can apply it to learn anything that you want to do. Who am I? My name is Ryan Rice. I'm a full-time real estate investor, and I share all of this stuff with the hopes that it can make you some more money. My favorite definition of learning, which is not my definition, but it's same condition, different behavior. Meaning you can hear or listen to something as much as you want, but if you change nothing about what it is that you do, then you've actually learned nothing. And before social media or YouTube, or we had a handheld device where we could pick up and look at anything that we wanted to look at, in order to get new information, you would have to define very specifically what it is that you wanted to learn. And then you would go seek it out in books or classes, etc. Now, with social media, everything you've ever wanted is right in front of you, and you simply have to get better at defining specifically what it is that you want and only consume that in which you want to learn. Otherwise, it's just entertainment. You're not learning anything. And so step one is just defining what it is that you want to learn. And step two is deciding that if you want to self-educate or pay someone to have them teach you what they know. If you decide to self-educate, you have to get really good at deducing what are you going to get the highest return on learning first, and then focus on that, and then you repeat that until you know what it is that you want to know about the thing. And that can be really hard because in many cases, you don't know what you don't know. So if you start from the beginning and you're trying to self-educate, it can take significantly longer because there's going to have to be a whole bunch of things that you have to sift through in order to learn what you should be focusing on first. And that's why it's always important just to start, because you're going to learn more from doing than you will from the 1,000 books, the 1,000 courses, or the 1,000 podcasts that you listen to. And so if you continue on this route, you just do an insane amount of volume until you keep getting better. Now, I personally am a big believer in alternative education, and I think it can drastically increase the speed at which you can reach your destination, because you can pay someone who has done the thing that you want to do, and they tell you exactly how to do it. I have probably spent close to, maybe even more than 6 figures at this point on alternative education. Now, when you do this, you pick someone who shows you proof that they can do what it is that they say. And I say this because there are many people out there who make 10 grand in 1 month and they think they're a genius. And so they make a course and then they try to teach it and sell the course, right? And these people are a lot easier to spot because they're not going to have as much proof as the people who really know what they're doing. And so you can use that framework to deduce who you're going to pay to learn from. Now, once you're inside a community or you've paid to learn from someone, your goal is to simply to take as much action as humanly possible on what's being taught. So you consume the information and you take violent action doing exactly what the person tells you to do. And here's the thing. You don't get to stray from what the person is telling you. You don't get to create your own little nuanced version. And you don't do this until you've proved that you can be better than the teacher. That's one of the most common things I see in alternative education is someone pays to learn, and then they either don't do what the person is telling them to do, or they emotionally justify why they're a special snowflake, and therefore they get to do things differently. So you stick to the plan, and you just do a violent amount of action as to what's being taught. Now, there are some nuances here because it's likely the person who is teaching you will have interaction directly with you as a student. And you have to be crystal clear with yourself that you cannot do what it is that the teacher is doing right now. You must do what they did when you were in the same position as you. You have to do what they did in the beginning. And I see a lot of people making the mistake of asking questions like, what does your current day look like? How are you currently spending your time? And none of that is relevant. What's relevant is how the teacher was spending their time in the beginning when they were in the same position as you. And so you have to be able to deduce that, because it's never what the teacher is doing right now that got them to where they are. What they're doing right now is getting them to where they're going, but you can't skip a step. You have to do step 1, then step 2, then step 3. You can't just skip to step 3. We have to emulate what they did that got them to where they currently are. So let's take real estate, for example. I have students every week who ask me, what am I doing to find deals? How am I currently spending my time? And for the most part, it's just not relevant to what they need to be doing. And as a coach in that community, I see that as a huge burden on my shoulders to ensure that they know that because I'm currently doing something, that doesn't mean that they should also be doing it. What I did when I got started that helped me most is reaching out to realtors, contractors, lenders, all in a substantial amount of volume. And then once I had a foundation of a team, I would then just make a whole bunch of offers in volume. And there was nothing else more important than that in the beginning, because that's what got me started. Once you have a team or a foundation, there's nothing more important. There's no more important KPI that you can track than how many offers that you make in the real estate business, because your deal flow is going to be in direct correlation to how many offers you make. And this is very important when it comes to learning. If you want to make money, for example, you can't look at what a billionaire is doing right now. It's just not applicable to you. You have to know how they spent their time when their net worth was equivalent to yours and do what they did during that time. And this is also really important if you teach something, right? If you are the teacher, you have a responsibility to teach under the proper context. You can't teach what you're doing right now if it's not applicable to the person you're teaching. But let's get back to the topic of learning. Once you know the right actions to take, then it's just a volume game. And the vast amount of your learning, the majority of it, is going to come from you doing a substantial amount of volume versus from the original teacher, whatever you learned from the teacher. And I'm going to give you an example. And this is a personal example for me. I'm learning content creation right now. Long form content creation in the form of podcasts, and short form content creation in the form of Instagram shorts, TikTok shorts, etc. And so let's take the podcast. I am getting close to producing 100 episodes of the podcast. And I have learned more recording and posting 100 episodes of my podcast than I ever did listening to people talking about podcasting or trying to watch videos on how to create a good podcast. I've now done 100 of them, and I can look back at all of them. I can look at what worked and what didn't. I can look at my analytics. I can see what my top 10% podcast episodes were. I can figure out what was similar about those podcasts. And then I can just do a whole bunch of that. And I didn't have the ability to do that before I did 100 podcast episodes. That was a very important part of my learning. And my learning in podcasting has increased significantly because I've done those 100 episodes. Because again, now I can look back at what went well, what didn't go well. And then I just make sure that I do what went well in my next 100 and that I don't do what went terrible in my bottom 10, right? So, and I think an important nuance of learning anything, I sucked at podcasting in the beginning. And if you go back and listen to my first podcast, like they weren't really good. And honestly, I'm still not even that good because I'm still very early on in my podcasting career, and I had to be okay with that. And the problem is this is where many of you stop. You're too, quote, embarrassed to put yourself out there. And I had people around me, people that were actually close to me, question why I was doing a podcast. And I just had to decide that I wasn't going to give a shit about what they thought. And then I just started and I kept going. And I can apply the same rule of 100 to the short form content that I'm creating, right? I recently started making short form content more regularly, and I've posted about 75 to 80 videos. I've done one video per day for the past 75 to 80 days. And a couple years ago, I took a course on how to make good short form content, and I have learned exponentially more actually posting than I did in that course. And that course was very helpful, by the way. I'm not saying it wasn't helpful. And it helped fast track my knowledge on how to do the thing. And so I'm not saying that I shouldn't have done it. But now that I have 75 videos produced, I can look and I can see which ones did really well. I can see what was similar about all of them. I can see which ones were terrible. And I can make sure that I don't do what was similar in all of the terrible ones. And now I can just take what I've learned and I can do another 75. And I literally just repeat that process until I get really good. And it's really that simple. And again, this rule of 100 idea is not mine. I learned it from someone else, but I really like it. Essentially what this is you do 100 reps and then you do a look back. And you look back at the top performing 10%. And you figure out what was similar about the top 10%, and then you just do a whole bunch more of it. And so let's apply this to starting to invest in real estate. You can apply this rule of 100 to conversations with realtors, contractors, lenders, and once you have a good team, you can apply the same rule of 100 to making offers. And once you make 100 offers, you can analyze your top 10 offers, because you're going to get a better outcome in those 10, and you're going to figure out what was similar, and then you can just keep doing that. And so that's how I think you can learn anything. You, 1, decide what you want to learn. 2, you pursue it on your own, or you decide to hire someone else. And if you hire someone else, you ruthlessly take action on what it is that they tell you to do, and realize that you're not a special snowflake, and you're not allowed to do things differently until you're better than they are at the thing that they're teaching. And then you just do a whole bunch of it. And learning this framework for learning has helped me along the way. And so I wanted to share it with you guys in the event that it was helpful for you. And so if this was helpful, if you could leave a rating on the podcast, that would mean a ton. Or if you could share this with someone that you think would help, that could be a way that you could say thank you. But I love you guys. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.